Welcome to Consortia Accounting Business Advisors, How to Build a High-Performance Accounting Business. This is Session 5, Performing Accounting Services. By way of introduction, this session introduces Consortia Accounting Business Advisors Accounting Production Process. The session presents a modern best practice process for performing accounting services and providing accounting products that increase your productivity. So as far as primary accounting business processes, I keep coming back to reminding you, but today we're going to talk about, as far as of those processes, we're talking about production and, of course, increasing productivity. So obviously, as far as the primary business process workflow, obviously you do your R&D, what products, what services are we going to offer the market? We market to them, we sell to them, and then of course we produce either the service, of course, or the product. As far as the reason why this is important is because number 5, production, we're always looking to increase productivity. We want to do things better, we want to do it faster. And as far as accounting business problems, which is again what many accounting firms suffer from, and today we're talking about productivity. And especially as I go through today's presentation, you'll begin to understand why many public accounting firms, that is local accounting firms or proprietorships or whatever, why they struggle with productivity. So, as far as services and products production process, we have a 5-step way we're going to go through here, and this is how I'm going to take the time to explain each of these to you. I like to keep things short and sweet and simple. And so I'm just going to introduce it to you, explain it to you, and move on. Now, number 1 is organization. Number 2 is workflow. Number 3 is staff. Number 4 is tools. And number 5 is policies and procedures. So as far as organization, so once again, as I mentioned to you, we provide accounting services and products. And so by organization, we break in between, of course, services and products. So let's take a look at the services part. So within our services, we provide what we call non-accounting services, accounting services, tax services, and digital marketing services. Now, as far as non-accounting, that would include business incorporation, business planning, business loan packaging. Now, many of you, especially those of you who were more experienced, would basically say, wait a minute, we don't offer those services. And that's fine. The reason why we do is because we specialize in small businesses. And so, yes, we want their bookkeeping work. We want their payroll work. We want their accounting work. But the reason why we want it is because we want to help them succeed. And so the bottom line is that we have add-ons that most accounting firms don't have, because these are things that that small businesses need and want. Remember, we talked about R&D. Well, now you're going to see, what became of our R&D. Now, as an example, here we are, Consortia Accounting Business Advisors. And as I've stated before, we have a sister company, which is Consortia Small Business Accountants, a national accounting firm. And so I will be using them as an example. Now, for your information, that's where Consortia Accounting Business Advisors came from, because we're the ones that developed Consortia Small Business Accountants. This is now, of course, the skills that we developed, we're offering, of course, now to other accounting firms. And so, again, today, the idea is not to pick you up as a client. The idea is to show you what we've done so that you can take it and do it if you will. So again, why do we do non-accounting services? Because these are things they want and need. And when we show them, and if we just listed, we do bookkeeping, payroll, accounting, and tax, then we'd be competing with every other person providing bookkeeping, accounting, and tax. But we try to distinguish ourselves by offering things that small businesses need that our competitors don't offer. And that would be, for example, business incorporation, business planning, business loan packaging. As far as accounting, traditional, bookkeeping, payroll, accounting, business performance analysis and recommendations. Now, again, I've worked for 2 large local firms, okay, and I've consulted with many proprietorships, and local firms. And for the most part, you're going to find that most of them offer bookkeeping, payroll, and accounting, but they don't offer business performance analysis and recommendations. And so, again, the idea is to distinguish ourselves from our competition, that is, our small business accountants, by performing analysis. The firms I used to work for example, people would pay us good money to develop financial statements for them, monthly financial statements. They were timely, they were relevant, they were accurate, but they would take them, pay us the fee, put them in the drawer, and that's it. And they used to drive me crazy. You know, you're paying us for information to help you make business decisions. And so when we developed our organization, we went the second mile to make sure that that was a huge part of what we did. Now, for your information too, if you were to go to our website, which is consortiasba.com, and again, that's the accounting firm, it would be a good example for you to follow. Now, again, we're just saying we're here to help you improve. And so you see things you don't like, not a problem. But I promise you, you will see things that you do like, that you could incorporate, that will help you. So anyway, that's our accounting services. As far as tax, we obviously provide individual and business tax planning and individual and business tax preparation. Again, there's a lot of local accounting firms that do tax preparation, but very few of them do tax planning. Okay. Again, it's critical, not only distinguishing yourself from your competition, but because that's obviously needed. And again, if you go to our website, consortiasba.com, those pages that we talk about tax planning and preparation, we explain why. And so that's what clients want and need. All right, and as far as digital marketing, once again, you may be like, what? You know, I don't know of one single firm that offers digital marketing. That's because they don't, okay? We do. Because again, every single small business needs digital marketing. They need to be operating through digital channels. They need a website development, hosting, and maintenance, and they need video production. Videos greatly increase your SEO, for example. So we spent so much time and money developing our own that we thought, wow, now that we have a department, why don't we go ahead and offer these services to our clients? And again, just food for thought. Now, as far as the CPA firm services hierarchy, now what I'm going to do is that, remember, we started out as a local CPA firm many years ago. We've made transitions, we've gone through name changes, but we finally are more of a corporation and offering accounting services. So we do refer to ourselves as a national accounting firm, okay, or company. But again, when you look at the structure, it's nothing like a traditional national accounting firm or a local accounting firm is what I should say. So again, the traditional hierarchy is to have a partner, a manager, and staff. And very quickly, as you all probably know, what happens is you graduate from school, pass the CPA, get a job with an accounting firm, and so you're part of their staff. And you're cranking out tax returns, you're cranking out bookkeeping, payroll, whatever the case may be, okay? All right, if you do well, you move up, you become a manager. But it's one thing to know how to manage, but it's another to know how to pick up clients. There are managers who are very good at what they did when they were in the staff, very good at managing, and that's why they become a manager. But most managers become managers because they also show potential of being a rainmaker, in other words, a partner. So when the partners look at bringing you up to a manager, the whole concept is, number one, can he or she manage, but more importantly, can they bring clients in? And if there's potential there, you'll be made the manager. And of course, then the next step would be, will you be made a partner? And that's only if now it becomes not so important that you can manage. What's real important now is, can you bring clients in? And rainmakers become partners. And again, that's just how it works. Okay, so as far as the traditional CPA firm workflow process, again, a partner picks up a client, the partner hands it off to a manager hands it off to staff, staff hands it back to the manager hands it back to the partner, and a partner does what we would call a cursory review. They're the ones signing it, so they did this for many years, at least 9, 10, 12 years, if not more. And so they still are a professional, and so they still want to have their hands or their eyes on it before they sign it and put it out the door. Now, so the first thing I want to point out to you is that that's old school and it's overkill. Now, if you're a large firm and you're providing some assurance services, such as auditing, for example, then obviously that's very, very important to have, to dot your I's, cross your T's. You're in a very risk environment, okay? But on the other hand, if you're a small local firm providing bookkeeping, payroll, accounting, tax, I'm not saying don't bother reviewing. I'm just saying you don't have to do overkill. And that's what we found. And so, as far as consortia services hierarchy, we have a manager and we have staff. So, again, we cut the partner out. Again, we're looking for productivity. So, as far as the consortia workflow process, and keep in mind too, again, we work more like a corporation. So, in other words, we don't have partners that bring in work. What we do is we have a marketing and sales department that brings in the work, and we have sales reps that bring in the work. And so they know nothing about how to do tax returns, so on and so forth, but they do know how to market and sell. Okay. And so the point being made is that the partner's totally out. So now with us, what happens is we pick up a client, it's assigned to a manager, manager assigns it to a staff. So the way the process flows is manager gives it to the staff does the work, gives it back to the manager, they review it, it goes out the door. So right there, we've cut out the partner, cut out a lot of redundancy. So as far as consortia services hierarchy, you'll see that we do have a senior manager, we do have a junior manager, we do have a senior professional, and we do have a junior professional. And you would see that again in a typical CPA firm as well, a larger local CPA firm. So from that standpoint, we are the same. So as far as CPA firm accounting and tax staff, now, so first of all, what I was trying to show you is that we've increased our productivity from taking the partner out of the picture. So again, the redundancy, that's one of the first things we did. Now, the second thing we did is that we sat there and said, no, wait a minute, here we specialize with small businesses. We're not performing assurance services. In fact, from our standpoint, the only people who look at this is the owners. What we need to make sure we do is keep them informed with timely, relevant, reliable information and teach them how to analyze those financial statements and, of course, assist them and make recommendations. That's what we're all about, okay? So we don't need a CPA candidate. We just don't. The truth of it is that CPAs, those led us when they graduate from school, pass the exam, get their experience, CPAs have been trained for working for national organizations, or they've been trained for working with the big four accounting firms. And so they don't know squat about working with small businesses. They don't know how to do bookkeeping. They don't know how to do payroll. They don't know how to do basic accounting, okay? And so why in the world would you spend so much money for them? They're coming out of there at 80,000 plus as far as the starting salary, especially with the shortage they have. And so what I'm trying to point out to you here is that the CPA tradition is that I'm a CPA firm, I go to the university and I'm looking for a candidate. And this is what the candidate has gone through. Now, things are changing here. They're lowering their standards, quite frankly, but let's just keep it simple. So they get their education. They then take the CPA exam, may or may not pass it or certain parts. Then if they go to work for a big four accounting firm, they'll be flown out to New York or Chicago, and they'll spend weeks there being trained on, for example, if they're in the audit department, on the E&Y audit way, or on the E&Y tax way. So they're going to train them and they're going to provide them guidebooks as far as step-by-step policies, procedures, etc., of how tax returns are done at E&Y, of how audits are done at E&Y. And then they'll come back and go to the office and go to work based on that. And of course, they're going to be working under a senior professional who's going to assign work to them, who's going to supervise them, who's going to review their work, so on and so forth, okay? And of course, after a year, they apply for their license and they're a CPA. So if you're a large accounting firm, you're providing assurance services, that's for you. But when you're working with small businesses, I would say no, it's not, okay? So what we do as far as consortia accounting and tax staff is that we realize, look, we're no longer going to universities and paying 80,000 plus, benefits for people we don't need. They're just overqualified. And so what we're going to do is we're going to train our own people. So we put together a curriculum and we model it after the CPA firm, but we watered it down a little bit. In other words, we're not training people to work for national organizations or for public accounting firms. We're working with small businesses. So let's teach them what they need to know. So the first thing we do is that we have several job opportunities and we have several licenses that we offer. And very quickly, the idea is that anybody who works for us and has gone through our program, then they're always going to start in bookkeeping, always. And once they get through bookkeeping, they can, and when I say bookkeeping, that would include bookkeeping and payroll, although we do have a specialized payroll department, but we want them to get their feet wet, okay? And so then what happens is that they get their bookkeeping and their payroll done, and then they become what we call, well, they start working on what we call a certified accounting paraprofessional. So at first, they become a certified public bookkeeper, a CPB, and then they become a certified accounting paraprofessional. In other words, they start getting experience in the actual accounting process. And then the next step is where they start working in the accounting analysis process. And then, of course, they get more experience there than the recommendations kind of thing. And that's kind of our hierarchy. So they would become a bookkeeper doing bookkeeping and payroll. They would start doing some accounting, and they would start doing some accounting analysis if they work up through our system. But anyway, the bottom line is that to become a bookkeeper with us, they have to go through our 3 courses. We have an accounting fundamentals course, we have a payroll fundamentals course, and we have a QuickBooks Online fundamentals course because we work with the QuickBooks Online ecosystem. All right. And so once they finish the courses, and I should say, as they finish each course, they then take a certification. So the first is a bookkeeping certification with accounting fundamentals. Then they have a payroll certification with payroll fundamentals. And then they have a QuickBooks Online certification based on QuickBooks Online fundamentals courses. And again, these are higher education college courses. Okay, so in a sense, that's our CPA exam, but we call it the CPB exam, Certified Public Bookkeeper. Now, just like if you were to work for a public accounting firm, you're going to fly back to New York. Well, we don't fly anywhere because everything we do is online. And so the idea is you then go through our training, and we train you on our processes, on our bookkeeping process, on our payroll process, and later, if they begin to advance, on our accounting process, on our accounting analysis process, etc. Okay, so we have training and guidebooks. We have written them. We write them consistently. We're always improving them, always making them better every year. And so they go through that. And then, of course, then they begin to work underneath our senior professional who's now had at least 1 or 2 years, have gone through this, been doing bookkeeping, et cetera. It's time for them to move on. And then, of course, a new person to begin. So what do we gain by that? So working with what we call non-CPA staff, the benefit is that we cut our staff salary by 33%. Now, that's not to say that we're, going out there to screw these people as far as, hey, we're going to pay you as little as we can. These are people who have not gotten college degrees. They've gone through our programs. And when there's a lot of people, just so you know, we in the state of Utah, we are a Utah post-secondary school. We're certified, okay? We're actually an accounting school. And so we let anybody go through that school. But in the end, we hire the best of the best. So as we work through them, every one of them gets the education, the certification, the training, the guides, and they even get experience with us. In a sense, we call it an internship. And so the idea then is that we're able to evaluate them. So on the one hand, they get excellent training to go out and become a bookkeeper somewhere. But on the other hand, this is where we get our bookkeepers from because we pick 1 out of 10, sometimes 2 out of 10. So the point being made is that these people are making more money than they would have worked if they'd worked anywhere else. And I hope you appreciate that. I'm not one of those that just, pay you as little as I can. I'm paying what people want to be paid, are proud to be paid, so on and so forth. Okay, so as far as accounting and tax tools, so we use bookkeeping. For bookkeeping, we use QuickBooks Online, either Simple Start, Essentials, Plus, or Advanced. And if I haven't said this, our website for Consortia Small Business Accountants is consortiasba.com. Now, I tell you that because I want you to go there and look at what we do, because you can glean a lot of things, especially as you hear it explained in these presentations, of how it'll help you. And when I first started, I said to you, when it's all said and done, either you can take what you learn and do it on your own, or you can hire Consortia Accounting Business Advisors to help you get there. Okay. And so it doesn't matter to us. We just want to be helpful to you. And yes, we do have Consortia Small Business Accountants, which is a national organization. And in a sense, I guess you can say we compete with you, but in a sense we don't, because you're mostly local, we're national. Do we have people in your area? Maybe, maybe not, but we're certainly not going to keep you out of business. That's for sure. It's plenty of work to go around as far as that goes. And again, we focused strictly on small businesses. But what I was going to say to you, though, is that you'll notice, like in our pricing on our website, you notice that our 3 criteria is we work with startup businesses, emerging businesses, and mature businesses. And our main focus, quite frankly, is working with newer, smart, less than 3 years in our startup, because we want to take them from this process to emerging to mature is the idea. Okay. Now, again, I only tell you that because as we talk about accounting and tax tools, we use QuickBooks Online. We use the QuickBooks Online ecosystem. So the reason why I told you what I told you about the categories is because, for example, our new startups, if they're very, very new, very small, we'll use Simple Start. Why pay more for a subscription you don't need? Or we may use Essentials. For our emerging, we may use Essentials or Plus. For our mature, we're either going to use Plus or Advanced, just for your information. So as far as payroll, QuickBooks Online Payroll, accounting, QuickBooks Online Accountant, business performance analysis, we use Fathom if we're working Simple Start, Essentials, or Plus. If we're using Advanced, then most of what's in Fathom is in Advanced. So we don't need to have Fathom. And then as far as tax planning and preparation, the other part of the ecosystem, the tax part, is called Intuit ProConnect Tax Online. There's not as much seamless integration, for example, with QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Payroll and Accountant, but there still is integration. It still helps you prepare your returns faster by using QuickBooks ecosystem and using ProConnect. Now, what I want to state here, and this is getting kind of old, where every year I'm like, should I take this out, take this out? But for years, when there was QuickBooks Desktop was king, and QuickBooks Online first started, when it first started in the early 2000s, it was a piece of junk. And of course, the technology was, so you don't blame Intuit's developers. But finally, in 2013, Intuit just started from scratch, rebuilt it all over again. And starting in 2013, it became a very viable product. And we started trying to tell other people that we advised, like you, start moving over. Now, we're not saying get rid of desktop. We're saying keep your desktop. But there will be some clients that you'll pick up or some clients you have that could probably benefit from online, okay? And I can't tell you the amount of arguments I got in from talking to people about, oh, desktop's better, so on and so forth. Well, yeah, it just depended on the time. But obviously from 2013 on, it kept getting better, kept getting better, and kept getting better, whereas now desktop is dead. And so that's why I still hesitate to give this presentation on this slide, but just for the heck's sake, and just so you know, this presentation is talking about helping you improve productivity. So this is, even though it's maybe a little old information, the point is that it shows you how you improve your productivity. You're always looking forward. What tools are out there, so on and so forth that we can use. So back to this. So very quickly, as far as cloud computing compared to desktop, if I have a desktop computer, laptop, cell phone, tablet, I can access my information and the application from anywhere in the world as long as I have an internet access. And of course, these days, that's pretty seldom where you don't have internet access. And so the point being made is that you have a cloud provider, in this case, Intuit. They have their data centers, they have their applications. And so from anywhere, I just love it. I love this world we live in right now. For example, I have a laptop. I have 2 beautiful, monitors I use in my office. I have a little port. So I'm working during the day, I close my laptop, unplug the one cord, go home, and at home I have the exact same setup as far as monitors and things. So all I do is take one cord, plug it in, and poof, there I am. Or if I go on vacation, I may not bring my monitors with me, but I certainly have my laptop. Wow. You have access anytime, anywhere to the client's data, to the client's application, so on and so forth. And so, again, I used to spend more time on this, but again, the point being made here is that just think about taken advantage of new technology. Because like I tell you, I had arguments with people on desktop for years until finally I came back and basically said, I told you so. So he had people who still had clients on desktop, and that was when it was going to be shut down in July of last year. And you're like, what are you thinking? Yes, they could have the subscription for 3 more years. I understand that, but you got to start moving them. So anyway, another story. But it's part of what we're talking about today as far as productivity. So the benefits of cloud computing, very quickly: safe stores, never losing data or hardware issues or disasters; ease of access the application and data at any time from anywhere with any internet connected device; this is probably the slide I could get rid of, but let's just finish it. Shared access, share your application and data with associates or clients, so not just your clients. Up-to-date software. When you access cloud software, it's the latest version. Maintenance, little to no maintenance or hardware costs, because all you pay for is your laptop or whatever the case may be. Okay. Oh, I used to go into a lot more detail on this, but again, the idea is always be looking at the newest and latest. Don't get it when it's brand new, but then again, don't wait until it's perfect, because you miss the boat by then. If you had taken the time to go after new clients, ask, and as part of your speech was, we can convert you from desktop to online, and here's why, you would have picked up a lot of clients because their accountants weren't doing that. They were just holding them on desktop as long as they could. And so that window's kind of passed now, but opportunities like that come up all the time and should take advantage of. Consortia QuickBooks Online Accountant. So again, as far as that tool, we perform our own bookkeeping, payroll, accounting, business analysis, and tax preparation with QuickBooks Online Accountant. We perform our clients' bookkeeping, payroll, accountant, business analysis, and tax preparation on QuickBooks Online Accountant. And of course, we manage and support and supervise our accounting and tax teams on QuickBooks Online Accountant. We still come across mainly sole proprietors that still are not using QuickBooks Online Accountant. Even though they may be using QuickBooks Online, they're not using QuickBooks Online Accountant. And they don't understand what it's for. And that's the reason why I take the time here. Most of you do. Okay, so this is review. But again, the idea is increasing our productivity, and you certainly will be if you use an accountant appropriately. In other words, even the people who realize, oh yeah, I should be using an accountant just to access my clients, they don't realize it's much more than that. It's also how you access your employees, and others, and do your own accounting, so on and so forth. Consortia Accounting and Tax System. So as far as the system, number one, and these are categories, these aren't actual steps, but like if you look at our manual, these would be categories. So as far as our accounting and tax system, number one, you set up your books, you set up your practice, and the new client set up workflows. Now, just for your information, what I've listed here is the actual title of the feature within QuickBooks Accounting. So the first thing you do when you get QuickBooks Online Accountant, and as you know, you get it by joining the Pro Advisor program, whether if you want to get their certifications and education or not, I would. They keep making it better, so it's a good source, CPE, so on and so forth. But the point is that you get the software for free. That's the main thing. That day may come to an end pretty soon, but nonetheless, it's still there. But what I'm saying is that there's 3 features. So you set up your books, you set up your practice, and the new client set up workflows. Those are the 3 things you do. Again, as I work with proprietors and others, I find that yes, they set up their books, and yes, they kind of set up their practice, but they haven't set up their workflows, okay? They don't understand the power behind QuickBooks Online Accountant. So as far as setup tools, okay, QuickBooks Online Accountant. Now, by the way, this is not just for you, okay, if you're newer, but it's also for your clients as well. Now, obviously, you're not going to be using QuickBooks Online Accountant, but the point is, so the tools that you need is QuickBooks Online Accountant for you, QuickBooks Online Payments. Now, that's into its e-commerce, I should say, merchant account. Okay, so if you are invoicing, which I hope you're not, because we'll talk more about that in a week or two, but the point is, if you're still invoicing clients, then when you send in the invoice, the client has an option to either pay with a credit card right then, or with an e-check right then, or to print it out and send you a check. But most people in the world we live in, they're going to pay with a credit card on the invoice. So you can only do that if you have QuickBooks Online Payments. Or if you do e-commerce, in other words, again, QuickBooks Online Payments can be used for e-commerce, but we have both, okay, because we mainly look at QuickBooks Online Payments mainly for just if you send out invoices, again, for payment on invoices. Whereas Stripe is for our products, our e-commerce, okay? When people buy our products, our courses, so on and so forth. Number 4, QuickBooks Online Payroll, okay? And number 5, company online bank accounts. And so obviously you need at least one banking account. And I always tell clients this, okay? Don't usually have to tell accountants this, but some people are new, especially when we start talking about freelancers, proprietors. But obviously, as you know, you should have a bank account specifically for your business. You never run personal transactions through there. You should have a personal bank account. You never run business transactions through there. You should have a business credit card. Now, is it an actual, as you see state here, number 6, it doesn't matter if it's technically a business or a personal credit card, whatever you want. But from your standpoint, you treat it as a business card. Only business transactions go through there. And then you have a personal credit card. Only personal transactions go through there. Okay. And number 7, company one sheet, 2-parcher QuickBooks Online compatible checks. Now, again, years ago, we paid everybody with checks. Whereas these days, we buy like 100 checks at a time. Now, I guess it's 200 a time. And it lasts us all year, if not more. We just don't write checks anymore. We don't want to, and we don't need to, okay? And I won't take the time here, but not only do we get paid by credit card, which is what we'll talk about next week, but we won't talk about, but on the other hand, we pay for everything with credit cards, okay? For the rewards, the miles, the hotel, so on and so forth. All right, anyway, so those are the setup tools you need. Accountant setup task. Number 1, collect QuickBooks Online setup information. And then with that, you set up your company. Again, these are actual terms, features in QuickBooks. Set up your company, set up your list, set up your bank and credit card accounts. They call them bank feeds, and set up your automated sales tax if that's what happens in your area, okay? And then as far as accounting and tax services, policies, and procedures, now again, I'm just going to suffice it to say that, we have literally written a guidebook and provide training on every service we offer. So we have bookkeeping with QuickBooks Online, payroll with QuickBooks Online Payroll, accounting with QuickBooks Online Accountant, preparing Form 1040 with Intuit ProConnect, preparing Form 1120S with ProConnect, preparing Form 1065 with ProConnect. So again, and this is what I'm about to say here, is that as far as the actual policies and procedures, that is documenting how you do things, and I just can't tell you the benefits of it, okay? Does it take time and effort? Absolutely. It should be done from April 16th until December 31st. That's your slackest time that you'll have, unless you're not you don't do taxes. But the point is that by us taking the time up front to literally say, this is how we do bookkeeping, step by step. This is how we onboard a client, step by step. And this is what you do, this is what you do, this is what you ask for, and this is how you ask for it, and so on and so forth. And then making it digital where the client goes in the client portal and just provides the information makes it so much better. But the point I'm trying to make is we are able to decrease the professional service preparation time by 25 to 33%, depending on if you're talking about bookkeeping, payroll, accounting, or tax, okay? And so, again, this presentation is all about productivity, increasing productivity. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is that something that a lot of you have a hard time with, especially you proprietors, okay, is that you've got to learn to delegate. Delegate, delegate, delegate. And I had a hard time with it. And finally, I realized, man, I got to get things done here, so I had no choice. And that's when I realized, wow, I should have done that years ago. Okay, so obviously delegate to somebody, whether if it's an employee, a spouse, son, daughter, whatever. I did that. I took advantage of all my family all the time. Whatever they could do when we were growing, they were doing, okay? But here's the point I want you to think about when you think of delegation. Give a man a fish. This isn't me. This is a famous, Oriental, whatever. Give a man a fish and he will live for a day. Teach a man to fish and he will live for a lifetime. So when people think they're delegating, they sit down and start working with somebody and they pretty much end up doing it themselves, okay? So in other words, you're giving them a fish and maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't. So what you need to do is train them up front, get them to know how they do this so you can pull away and only be there to answer questions or review their work. Let them do the work, okay? So again, give a man a fish and he will live for a day. Teach a man to fish and he will live for a lifetime. So focus on teaching them how to do it, okay? Now, the last thing here is delegation steps. Number one, provide a step-by-step procedure checklist with objectives, policies, and procedures. So again, that's the advantage we have and you can have, and that is if you're teaching somebody to assist you with your bookkeeping clients, you start by pulling out your bookkeeping with QuickBooks Online. At least that's what we would do. And we sit down with them and go say, okay, let's go to page so-and-so. And the first part, of course, talks about onboarding. So if they're helping you with onboarding, which our professionals don't, that's our non-professionals that do the onboarding. But nonetheless, it's all in there as far as how it's done. So as far as bookkeeping, you collect this information, this is how you collect the information, and here's how you use the information. So what I'm saying is provide a step-by-step procedure checklist. In our case, we'd call it a guidebook with objectives, policies, and procedures. When you do this, do this. When you do this, don't do this. That kind of a thing. Number two, you perform the procedure with them and explain the objectives, policies, and procedures and answer any questions. I remember the first time I went to work, and I just started learning how to do bookkeeping and payroll, working for a large accounting firm. Back those days, small businesses relied heavily on firms to do their books. And I loved it. I really did. It was great. And so, but then all of a sudden, one day, the partner calls me and says, David, I want you to do this audit. And I'm like, what? I've never done an audit before. And he goes, well, here's an audit manual. Here, learn. That's how you do it. And he said, goodbye. And so that job was way, way over budget. Of course, he blamed it on me, obviously. But had he done this, okay, then it would have been on budget or maybe a little bit over for a person who's new. But the point I'm saying is you got to not only write the manual, the guidebook, but you also have to spend a little time to teach them. Now, hopefully you get to a point to where you have a manager that does that or a senior that does that. But at first, it may be you. You perform the procedure with them and explain the objectives, policies. So in other words, you do it and they're watching you. They're shadowing you. You're doing it. Number three, have them perform the procedure with you to verify their understanding. So then, okay, here's what we do. Let me show you how it's done. And you do it in pieces. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, okay? You don't just do the whole audit. You teach them little pieces and then have them do little pieces. That's what juniors do. Juniors don't do all the bookkeeping. They don't do all the payroll. They don't do all the accounting. They do bits and pieces of it. Hey, go do the AP, go do the AR, go do the rec, that kind of a thing. That's how you teach them. You don't just send and say, you do the bookkeeping, okay? And so anyway, so you teach them piece by piece, just like you eat an elephant, all right? So anyway, back to this. So then you sit them down and say, okay, now you do it, but you stay there and watch them. Because you're going to have, nope. Well, here, and why do you do this? Well, here's the reason why you do this. People can do things better when they understand why they do it. Okay, so explain it to them and welcome questions. And number four, have them perform the procedure without you, but then you review the completed procedure and provide review points. Okay, that's how you train people. And yet very few people do this. And then they get good and they get good fast. And then you can pull off and do more important things. Okay. All right. So again, the whole presentation today was on increasing your productivity. So I try to keep it to 3 or 4 most important things that'll help you to do that. Okay. All right. So we just finished number 5 session. Now we're going to go number 6 next week, finance, increasing cash flow. I think you'll really like that. And we'll finish up with customer service, and I think you'll really like that as well. Those are 2 critical things. But thanks for attending. Have yourselves a wonderful day.